hoping from the class, the MFA class, is that I want you all to be thinking very hard about posing some questions for our students who are speaking today. So, and I hope that you will send me those questions in the chat to me, and I'll read, then I will go ahead and select the questions and read them out to the students, or to our alum, actually. So, does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
I think we should get started. I want to welcome all of you to our 2020 MFA Artist Talks. It's a new format, obviously. A webinar Zoom session is definitely a new experience for all of us for these talks. And so we're excited that you're all here with us. And you may have heard me speaking to some of our current MFA students, and I really was excited to integrate this into their class time, so that really our 5 presenting students today are setting the bar very high for our current students. Today, I think, is a real rite of passage for our students who will be speaking, because we've spent 3 years preparing all of you to be professional artists, and you graduated and you now are professional artists. And nothing kind of seals the deal better than the artist talk. And this may be your first one, or maybe you've done a few already, but I think that it really is a moment to reflect, and you know, it's a moment of arrival, I would say. So I'm so excited to be hosting this event and sharing this with everybody and celebrating all of you and hearing about your artwork. So today we will hear from Patricia Miller, Frank Perez, Rebecca Waring-Crane, Jacob Adami, and Haley Roche. And we'll be going in that order. And each artist will be presenting for 15 minutes. And we will have a Q&A of about 5 minutes afterwards. And so I'm hoping that the audience will be able to type their questions into the chat box at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side. And then I'll review the questions and ask them on your behalf. So I just want to introduce and say thank you to a couple of people. The first person that I need to thank is, of course, Teddy Basilova, the director of Visual Resources Center. She has been instrumental in these graduate students' experience, especially as they finished their thesis projects and culminated and graduated. So Teddy, thank you. You are a joy to work with, and you really had a vision for this today. And I'm thrilled that you've made this happen. So I'm so grateful. And then I also want to thank Professor Matthew Poole, chair of the Art and Design Department, for his continued leadership, and he may want to say a few words to the group today.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. Well, I just want to begin by congratulating all 5 of our graduating MFA students in 2020. That's Frank, Patricia, Rebecca, Jacob, and Haley. It's an incredible journey. You know, it's 3 years of really intense work. And, you know, I said a few words on Tuesday when we had the virtual opening. So I'll repeat a little bit of that. You know, it's a really challenging experience doing an MFA in studio art. It's unlike any other academic discipline, because it is an academic discipline, but it's also what we call an autocritical discipline, in that it's constantly changing. It's constantly reflecting on what it is. You know, we're always constantly reflecting on art that is being made around the world, on art's relationship to society, to politics, and, you know, even work that appears perhaps not to be explicitly political has a political dimension, which is sometimes very rarefied, but certainly abstracted. But it is there. There's an incredibly important function of art in society. And, you know, we specialize in the visual arts, but whether it's music or theater or literature, the arts perform an incredibly important political and social function. And, you know, I think that's one of the things that we emphasize in our department, and particularly on the MFA. And, you know, just the very fact of engaging intensely for 3 years with one's own practice as an artist and engaging with the context in which we want our artwork to be placed as MFA students is an incredibly, I mean, it's an exhausting task, actually. It's a lot of work, and it's full of doubt, and it's full of anxiety, and it's full of worry. And so because it's difficult and complex. And so the achievement of our 5 graduating students this year is fantastic, and as it always is. And we're so proud to see these 5, but you know, every year our graduating students, you know, really flourish into the artists that they wanted to become. And the one thing to bear in mind is that the teaching on the MFA is very different to undergraduate teaching. You know, we basically push the MFA students in at the deep end, at the beginning of the MFA program. We treat you like artists. And so the teaching is very much kind of guidance. It's sort of nudging and suggesting. It's not didactic. We don't tell students what to do, and the students have to find their own path. And that is challenging too. So we're always very, very proud to see the development in the students' work over those 3 years, and we're incredibly proud and excited by the work that we've seen in these thesis shows that have been produced, but also to see the development in the individuals, in all 5 of you as people, and as thinkers as well as makers, and it's always very exciting to see that, to see your confidence grow and so on. So, you know, it's been a terrific experience working with you all. We've loved every minute of it. I hope you have. I know it's difficult at times, and especially, you know, since February, when the pandemic made everything so difficult. It's been amazing how you've all stuck with it and been incredibly gracious and patient. So we thank you for that as well. As many of you probably know, 2 of our MFAs, Frank and Haley, they were able to have their thesis shows in the Dutton Gallery, the solo shows, and we have documentation of that, which we'll be putting together to publicize and present via our website. But for Patricia, Rebecca, and Jacob, sadly, they couldn't have their thesis exhibitions in the Dutton campus, and so as a sort of interim measure, we produced, and Teddy was instrumental in this and worked incredibly hard, as did Alison, as did Professor Ed Gomez, to make it a web-based presentation, which of course is not ideal, but I think the students have made it. I think Patricia, Rebecca, and Jacob have made really the very best of an incredibly difficult situation. So in the chat, I'm just going to paste a couple of URLs, because if you want to see, if you haven't seen them already, and if you want to see those virtual shows, you can go to this address, and there's a link you'll see on our galleries page for the website. And then shortly we'll be hopefully adding Frank and Haley's documentation as well, so that they're alongside Patricia, Jacob, and Rebecca's shows too. Well, I've probably talked enough. I'll stop. Thank you for attending, everybody. Thank you to all our panelists. I'm looking forward to hearing, you know, more in-depth discussion about your work. And again, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matthew. You're always very inspiring and sum it up just right. I have to say, watching you all grow over the 3 years and working with all of you pretty closely is a very satisfying part of my job. And I've seen our alums go off to do wonderful things, land on their feet. We've talked about professional practices, we've talked about making and thinking and everything else that comes up. And I know you all have a very bright future. It's just going to be a little bit difficult during these times, but I do believe we've talked about hard work pays off, and it really does. So I'm excited for all of you, and I know I'll be following all of you. for sure. So without further ado, I think we need to get started. I'm really eager to hear all of your presentations. So I'm going to turn the screen over to Patricia Miller, and she will start off, and you can share your screen and we'll get started.
Okay, so hi you guys. I can't see any of you, but you can see me, I'm sure. So my name is Patricia Miller, for those of you that don't know me, and I make abstract plywood sculptures depicting my experience with anxiety and depression. And I did my undergrad and grad school at Cal State San Bernardino, and like Matthew said, the grad program was a lot different than undergrad, and for me it was like a huge therapy session. And I was really like challenged to like critically analyze my every move and decision I was making, and I realized the material I was working with and the way I was working with it really related to what I was dealing with, like my struggles with my mental health. And I found out that through my process, like I gained a stronger appreciation for any imperfections within myself and anything and the imperfections around me and the materials that I was working with. And so this all started when I destroyed one of my paintings that I was unsatisfied with, and I revealed all of the beauty within the material, and it just became more fragile and vulnerable the more I like tore apart the pieces, and I just really related to that feeling. And the layers within each piece of plywood was like very unique, and it made me also think of like the layers within myself and everyone else that's very much unique. And so with my process, I use a flathead screwdriver and a hammer that has a rubber face, and the rubber face minimizes the impact and vibration, so I don't ruin my arms. And I use the rubber gloves to protect myself from splinters and injuries. And I use these tools just because they were the first thing that was accessible to me. And I ended up realizing that like nothing works better than these tools. And so on the right, the image shows kind of me tearing apart, getting basically two artworks out of one piece of wood. And then I hose down the work, and it makes it be able to bend more without breaking. And then I use whatever I can find again to hold it in place while it dries and hopefully stays in that position. And then I use, I come up with my titles just by stuff that I deal with myself, or things that my friends have said to me that that's resonated with me. And I use shredded or pieces that I torn apart of raw canvas, because I feel like the art world is kind of unfair and unappreciative of their artists at times. So I wanted to bring that element into my work and that conversation into some of my pieces. This piece is called Crazy, and it's supposed to resemble like a straitjacket. And I feel like this is kind of what it feels like when people might call me crazy, or if you call someone crazy, like this is what they feel like you think of them. And then this piece was inspired by the song by Shawn Mendes, In My Blood. It's about his experience with anxiety, and he mentions that he feels like he's crawling in his skin, and I really related to that feeling. So I hope to like make more of these pieces and make it so you can walk around it fully, because I distress the back of it too. I've worked with many different thicknesses, and so I keep all of the debris. I try to make my work as zero waste as possible. And then I found that I could use the debris and leftover chip pieces to make other works, like my piece All Better Now. And this one's about like when your life falls apart and you're putting back together the pieces and kind of living in denial of being all better now. And I feel like a majority of my work is unfinished. I think a lot of them can be weathered more, torn apart more, and distressed more, but I feel like it's a slow process that's going to take time. And this is an example of that one. I've showed the image on the left in, I showed that piece in our second year show. And then on the right is kind of what it looks like now, left in the sun and torn apart a little more. So I feel like my pieces are always going to be evolving and changing. Then I did these to remind the viewer that I'm using this wood and this material to explain human experiences and feelings. So I think that was getting kind of lost with my big sheets of plywood. So I made this one, I cut it down to relatively my size. It might be like a foot taller or longer, but I think it really comes across like the feeling of when you're curled up in like a fetal position and you're just telling yourself everything's going to be okay or I'm fine, and trying to like comfort yourself. And then I took a step away from working with plywood when my parents told me that they were going to sell their house, sell my childhood home, and I was dealing with my emotions around that and feeling unstable. So I decided to work through those emotions by creating artworks with all of the furniture that I've grown up with my whole life. And so this is one of the pieces called Unstable Table. And then this was an image of like the table inside my home. And this brought me to the idea of doing installation work and creating eventually a whole installation of all of the furniture within the house. And then in February, we did a sign show. And so this is the image of the CNC machine cutting out the shapes for my signs, which was very helpful. And I definitely recommend trying it. It was a new process for me because I'm not really good with Photoshop and working with machinery. But this exhibition really inspired me and showed me that I can use different mediums in my future work, and using text. I really liked graffiti because it's used by a typically younger generation that wants to be seen and heard. And I also distressed the back of it because it was out of plywood. So to note what I normally do. And this one's burned and I used a blowtorch for this one. And with my pieces, I feel like it's very much about the process. And I feel like that is definitely missed when the viewer is only looking at the final product of my work. So I've realized that I need to think about ways to document my work, doing like time-lapse videos or performances, so that I can show the beauty within when I'm making the pieces as well. And I have a little time-lapse video. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Here's my website and Instagram in case you guys want to contact me. My email's linked to both of them, and I am just really excited and still inspired to try new things and to expand on what I've already done, and to do more installations and performances possibly. So thank you.
Okay. So Patricia, maybe if you could stop sharing screen. All right, thank you. All right, thank you for that. And it's been really fascinating to watch you on your journey.
Likewise.
Yeah, it's been really an honor to work with you and see you grow and kind of, you know, the subject matter is just so personal and usually so silent and invisible, and you've made it visible, which is really fascinating. And I think I know a lot of people can relate to that. So we can open this up for questions in the chat. Anybody have a question for Patricia? Okay, thank you. Okay, this one's from Tim Musso. Have you inked and made relief prints with your distressed plywood blocks? That's a great idea.
No, yeah, I definitely want to do that eventually. I haven't really thought about prints as much as doing like embossing and making paper kind of ghost prints of these works, but definitely something I've talked about with Denise.
Yeah. It's sort of the kind of work that you'll get up to now that you don't have the studio at the university, and you're probably likely in a smaller space. Then you have time to just really spend looking at your work and trying those little things that you just probably didn't have time for, those little experiments.
Right, exactly.
Right. Any other questions for Patricia? I mean, I guess I have one thing. I'm sure your parents are so proud of you, but I sort of am curious about how they felt about you destroying the kind of your childhood's furniture.
They don't really understand what I do, but they're always supportive of it. And yeah, they're more than willing to give it to me and see what I can do with it. So
Yeah.
they're excited.
Wonderful. Okay.
I think I'm more sentimental than they are, and I probably had more of an issue like letting go of everything and doing stuff with it than they did. So they're just like, okay, like
Yeah.
these need to be something.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I would imagine it's going to take a couple of years to think about, like, to kind of reflect back on that experience of growing up with this furniture, but then also choosing to deface it or change it, modify it, shall we say, or destroy it, you know, and what that all really means in your life and to your art practice. So it's pretty interesting. Check back in with me in a few years. We'll talk again about that. All right. I don't see any further questions. Any last chance for questions for Patricia? Okay. Thank you. Oh, yes.
Sorry, I think there's one from Tim again.
Oh, another one from Tim.
Shall I just read it out?
Yeah, please.
It says, what was the most critical reading in the past 3 years that pushed you towards this body of work?
I'm not sure it was like any particular reading as far as just seeing other artists be like vulnerable within their work, and it made me be more comfortable in being vulnerable within my own work. I think it's an important element to like relate to each other, especially during this time. Like it's just important to find ways to relate with each other and to get things across to people that other people don't understand.
And we have another question from Edgar. He's at Perez Pena, asking, how many pieces of furniture do you have in this series of work?
I have, I didn't count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6. So I have like coffee table, dining room table, a wall unit, some side tables. So it's like going to be like a whole installation once I'm done of like a whole layout of my house.
So has the house sold? It would be really interesting to restage the work back in the house, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually never even thought about that. That'd be interesting. I wish I got it done before we sold it, because we did empty it out and there was that opportunity, but one day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any further questions? I'm watching the chat a little more closely now. No. Okay. Well, congratulations to you, Patricia. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So we're going to move along to Frank Perez. Are you ready, Frank, to take over the screen?
Yes.
You are. Excellent. Okay.
So my name is Frank Perez. I will give you a little background. When I came to the program, I came from a 20-year commercial career already in photography. So when I got to the program, I was interested in doing photography, but at the same time, I wanted to kind of step away from it and experiment a little bit. So I'm going to share some of my work that I've done over the last 3 years. And like I said, these are all pretty much experimentation of ideas that I was having. So we all see this? Everyone okay? Okay. So as well as photography, I also do some writing as well. And when I came to the program, one of the ideas I had was I wanted to find a space where the photography, the other creative writing, the doodles, everything I was doing, I wanted to find a place where all these could live together in one place and basically bounce ideas off each other. I wanted a place where they could all live and breathe together. So with that, I started working on artist books, where I would go ahead and I would start doing some of the poetry and the drawings and the photography all together. So this is one of the pages. I call this one Drive. Like most people, I have this thing with freeways. I don't know what, I think it's just the long lines and the curves. I love it. I love them. I also started playing with a little bit of sculpture also. So this is a wire sculpture, and this was in a show that the Edward Gomez's suitcase show, Goka, that went to Colorado. So as this was going to Colorado, I started thinking, well, what does Colorado and California have in common? And I started thinking about the gold rush and here in California, and then how Colorado at that time, was this what, 2008, so 2007, 2008, how they were leading the whole idea of using their profits from legal marijuana to invest into their community and so forth. So this was kind of a reflection on that, where and the idea was that we don ourselves with these golds and we carry our staffs to proclaim our, whatever it is we're standing for at the time. So it was kind of, went a couple of different ways. And I had fun working with this. One thing with photography and then coming into the program was I was able to play with my hands a lot more, which I really liked. And so by getting into sculpture, I started getting into a little bit of the printmaking as well. This is some of the redaction poetry that I was working on. Again, I was trying to find a way, not just for the poetry, but to find where this would all live together. So these are two separate pieces. The top one's called Depending On, the bottom is Absence. And this idea was basically to go through newspapers and find the poetry in it. This is an idea, excuse me. This was an idea kind of influenced by by Maguette and his piece, This Is Not a Pipe. I like the symbolism of that piece, and I started thinking, what other symbols do we have in our life, and what do these symbols represent? So with this was everything. It's a little hard to see because of the gold, but it's everything that a cigarette means to a smoker. So it's, you know, one of them is that it's a force field. The other one is that it's a silent moment away from the chaos. One of the lines is that it's my favorite religious icon, because it is. A cigarette is a religious icon in the society we live in, at least to some people. Also, I got really influenced, or started going to the point where in this book, it wasn't just the text and stuff. I was also looking at processes. So here's an ink transfer. Sorry, I have a big dog, so you may hear a couple of barking. This is an idea I had where I was playing with the idea of pareidolia. Pareidolia is where the human eye sees patterns, and where none exist. So with this, I was playing with the idea of what we see in smoke. In this case, this was a vape, so it wasn't actual smoke, but I wanted to see the way it would carry up and what it would bring out from it. This was shot on digitally and then blown up. This, I actually blew this up to 3 by 4 feet and was sitting in my studio for a while. To me, this looks like flowers blooming. So this is along the same idea of pareidolia, but I went the other way, and I started playing with the idea of, if we squint our eyes, we start seeing these beautiful little light drops everywhere. And again, with those, I saw it as a form of pareidolia, where we're now, for lack of a better, redacting the bigger details and going for the smaller, just highlights of light. This is actually my background, or one of these is my background on my Zoom right now. This is a bit more of the redaction poetry. This is bits and pieces of the redaction poetry put together to make one longer piece of poetry. This was part of my my second year show. This is a piece that was also my second year show. This is called 13 Pounds, Give or Take, or plus or minus. And this is a collection, a collection of all my creative writing since I was 14. So this is about 30 years worth of writing. And I had the idea where I wanted to see not just the idea of carrying these through life with me, but they're always on my mind. There's kind of a weight to them that I know they're in a box in the garage, and I should be doing something with them. I should be going through them, editing. You know, the blank books kind of call out to me, you know, that I need to be filled. You need to fill me, work on me. So I was curious about the physical weight of these, and it came out to 13 pounds over the last 30 years. So this is an antique scale near this here. This is a piece that I was starting to work on, or a project that I'm working on. Still the whole text base and merging the photography. Now I've gone to the point where I'm actually trying to replace objects in the photograph or in the piece with signifiers of what the object is. So with this one here, you know, we all know that California is known for these beautiful sunsets and everything. And some of the stuff I've read in the past, it says that it's the smog that actually makes our sunsets so beautiful here. I forget the writer, and I wish I could remember, but this writer described LA as God's ashtray because of all the smog we have out here. This is an idea I was playing with where I wanted to see how abstract I could get with the camera without actually creating an abstract, if that makes sense. So I started thinking of the ideas of the reflections and how reflections can create this crazy abstractness to it. So, and that's what this is here. This is a reflections of objects that we created these kind of surreal landscape. This is another attempt at bringing the photography and the creative writing together to live in one spot. This is a Polaroid image and a text-based piece digitally combined to make one piece. Both pieces have to do with rainy days. The image itself is of palm trees reflected in a puddle from a rainy day puddle, and the text is just rain written over and over again on a big 18 by 20 piece of paper. And then I scanned it, or I took a photo of it and then merged the two images together. So days colliding. Some fun stuff I was playing with, doing collages with my cell phone. I like playing with my cell phone and using the cell phone as not just a snapshot, but as an artistic medium, I guess, or tool in my artistic attempt at documenting the world or creating stuff around me. I see the cell phone, some people see the cell phone as kind of a toy to play with, but you know, by pushing photographic ideas and concepts, you can actually achieve really great images from cell phones. So this is that. This is pushing the cell phone to make those great images, even though it can be considered, you know, a lo-fi tool compared to some of the bigger, better cameras out there. This is the redaction poem and some painting that I did for my second year show. This is from a series that I've been working on for 10 years, and it's ongoing series, and so it's why I'm showing this. This was created during the 3 years of my MFA. But right now, this is the working title for this is Daddy Life, and it's little tidbits of parenthood without actually showing the kids in it. So this would be, you know, their homework and their snack and the pretty sun coming through the window and just kind of highlighting something that's typically very mundane and could just be kind of blown off. I kind of describe it as, you know, that perfect light coming through the kitchen window and falling on a sink full of dirty dishes. You know, there's a moment where you just kind of look at it and go, wow, that's really pretty. This is my thesis show. Again, I went with the idea of trying to find a place with the photography and the creative writing. This by far was the most conceptual of, I believe, of my work. And what I was trying to work on was the idea of Duchamp and Walter Benjamin. Duchamp wrote that he described it as the artist coefficient, and he says that in the intended, there is always something that is not expressed. And then in what we don't express, there's always something that's intended. So, and I really loved that idea that there's kind of a gray area in that middle ground right there, that you're not really sure how this is going to come out, but by putting yourself into it, you know, it's kind of a surprise that comes out of it. So that's where I was playing with these. So these are blank Polaroids. And what I did was even with them being blank, there's a certain weight that we attach to these images, what they could have been. So what they are blank squares, but what they could have been is great moments captured. Show another one. And each of these, it's hard to see on this, and I'll show you a detail further on, but there's titles written on underneath each one of these of what it could have been. Some of the titles were The Morning After, Nostalgia, Evidence, Doors That Closed and Windows That Opened, and so forth. And I try to take it across the idea that these are images that have happened over a lifetime that we kind of keep in our mind, and we think, wow, if that shot only would have come out, I'd have some kind of evidence that it happened. But since it doesn't, all that's left is what we attribute to these blank images, if that makes sense. It's almost like a phenomenological experience. You know, I am projecting on this blank square what it is I want or what it is I miss from this moment. So this one here on the left is a Polaroid, an SX70 print that had issues. And again, it's the same thing. So I blew this up to about 3 feet, about 3 feet by 3 feet by 4 feet. This is an image that I had in one of the second year, this was a group show. This was a frequency show, visual frequency. And this is an image I shot in 2010 that I repurposed. And I felt like it lives today just as much as it did, 10 years ago when I shot it. I did add the kind of pop aspect to it, throwing the 3D, the yellow, or I'm sorry, the blue and the red to give it a 3D effect to it. This is a color study. And I need to switch over real quick, sorry. Share. What happened?
Frank, just to let you know, you're at 15 minutes right now.
Ah, man, I thought I wasn't gonna have enough time. So I just want to show you some really quick details from, it seems like it doesn't want to come up. Why not? So I'm sorry, I wanted to show some details of the prints and some of the poetry on them, but for some reason it doesn't want to cross over. So that's it.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a lot of work that you shared with us. Thank you very much. I'm sort of curious to know, you've had a few months since graduating, what you've been up to. Recovering? Working?
Yes, recovering a little bit. I have to admit that summertime is like my least productive time of all year. I don't do well in heat, and I just kind of shut down. I just kind of like stand next to the air conditioning. But I've done a lot of thinking on my project and what I've gone through, and I'm kind of just still getting through all of it. In hindsight now, I think back on my thesis show and I'm thinking, wow, I wish I would have done this, or I could have gone this, or I feel like I could have explained this a little bit better. So, but it may kind of resurface into something else. So.
Well, I'm sure you'll have more opportunities to kind of rethink some of those things and in future exhibitions. We have one question from Marley for you. She's asking, do you see yourself expanding on daddy life as your children get older?
Yes, to a certain point. Eventually it's going to just, I don't think it'll be as cute as it is now. But yeah, that's going to be a long-term project.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Frank? I'm not seeing anything pop up here. Well, congratulations to you, Frank, and thank you. Oh, yep. It was really interesting to watch you grow and evolve. We should pick up the pace, is my sense, because I think Zoom is very draining, right? I think Rebecca coined it perfectly, zoomed out. I get it. So let's, without further ado, move on to Rebecca Waring-Crane.
Thank you so much. Let's see if I can do this. Wow. Share my screen. Let's see. Okay. How's that, everybody? They're working?
It looks
Thumbs up?
great.
Okay, here we go. My name's Rebecca Waring Crane. The title for my thesis is Stories I'm Telling Myself, and this is supposed to be my thesis presentation, but thankfully, I already have my diploma, so we're gonna call it The Muddy Baptism That Is Grad School, because that diploma's in hand, and I'd rather invite you into my medium, which is story, than craft and academic defense. So let's dive in. Thank you, Matthew, for setting me up for that, saying it's the deep end. Here we go. It's going to be fast at first. Here's a memory from the very first cohort meeting. I believe I'm quoting correctly. Kathy, you're out there. I know you can help me if I've got it wrong. Welcome to the MFA in Visual Arts program. Graduate school is a once-in-a-lifetime privilege. Enjoy your time here and exploit the program. I know she said those words, exploit the program. That made complete sense to me. So, like a hungry person invited into a banquet, I dove in. We're gonna go faster at first and then slow down when we get a little closer to the end. Here's a little view of what it was like for me coming through this program. I took a lot of independent studies. I found myself in every studio I could, except painting, which is funny because I submitted a portfolio in painting to get into the program. I worked with undergrad students and learned next to them, which is great if you have heavy pieces that you can't manage. It's nice to have people who are willing to step up and lend a hand. I tried to be of help. I learned as much as I could. I did the set pieces for class, but I also worked on independent curiosity and exploration projects. Thanks for asking me to make a maquette, Allison, because now I know what that is, and I appreciate the value of it. Every single visiting artist helped me learn how to talk about my art. They listened well. They showed me what they could do. I was inspired to know that people are making a professional life out of this, and many of them became friends and have remained in contact, which is really powerful. Thank you to every faculty member who scheduled those visits and made those talks possible. That was really fantastic and money well spent. My first year in, I had a solo exhibit. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I learned a lot. I had no idea what happens behind the show when it comes to setting everything up, planning, installing, advertising, and making snacks. Then you invite your friends, and basically it's like the most vulnerable thing in the world, almost like getting naked, you know what I mean? Except I kind of had that work already. And again, fabulous learning experience, hard work, thankful for so many people who stepped up and helped make it possible. After that show, I started exploring, working with, again, more material, finding my way, trying things out, things that may have been class assignments, things that weren't class assignments, and finding a body of work, or at least presenting some things for our group show in the second year. Again, another fabulous learning experience, collaboration, the frustration, the confusion, the difficulty of what it is like to work with other people made a big difference, made an impact, and I felt so supported by the group. After that show, continuing exploration, and now here's a hint of what is to come. This is an image from the 3D scanner in the VRC, and look closely. Here I am holding up a chair. Eventually, this idea, this concept would evolve into the piece Mom that's in my thesis show. Grad critiques were really important, and sometimes mine were really awful. Not because I wasn't prepared, but just because I was still finding my way. Look here at the piece on the left, if you will. One of those chunks of wood would have a new life. And this is the first rendering of the pill bottles and putting them on a light stand. Thanks, Frank. What a great idea. They still have to be finished in that photo. Life was hard. Accidents happened. Hard work was lost. Pieces were broken. And I just kept making and studying, and I got to TA, and then it was time to prepare for advancement. that came up so fast. Suddenly I was at the end of Act 1, and here was this issue, this Act 2 of the story. But I thought, I can do this. I'm ready. So I tried new materials, found objects, soap, concrete. I was casting, I was carving. I showed up well prepared for my defense, or my, here's what I can do, my list of artists who inspire me. I nodded to my work. Look here, I've done a solo show, I've done a group show. Here are all these cool things I'm making. And then I waited to be told, congratulations, you're advanced to candidacy. And that didn't happen. Here's what I wrote in my daybook on my personal blog. It's part of my website now, not hard to find. This is what I was told. You're the one person we need to nudge the most, not to make more work, but to find focus for your thesis show a year from now. Rebecca, you're so easily seduced by materials. I was busted. So I just, I kept smiling. And I thought, oh yeah, okay. So I was granted a sort of reprieve or a stay and told, your committee will meet you next quarter. Find your way. I kept making things. I tried new approaches. I tried familiar approaches and multiples. I tried different finishes. And oh, let me tell you, the machines on campus, the tools that are there, I made the most of every opportunity, but I still didn't know where I was going. So thank you, Tim Musso, for being one of those people I could say, I don't know what I'm doing. My committee is advancing me, but it's kind of temporary. Well, it's not temporary, but it's with a hitch. Tim had listened to me when I sat in his office before going to grad school. You got to find those people, pay attention to them. They have interesting views and often generous hearts. Talk to those people. So Tim asked me some questions and reminded me of a conversation that pointed me to, well, it pointed me in a direction. I decided to revisit family of origin. This is my grandmother here in the center, my babushka right here, her husband, and their firstborn, my Aunt Louise. My mother was born 18 years after this photo was taken. The other individuals in the family are babushka's parents and her siblings. So her mother is holding one of my grandmother's siblings. So that's good material. Here's my family of origin. I'll let you have a look at that. Lots of great material there, as you can imagine. But where am I going with this? So here's the thing. When you want to exploit the program, it's not just about the studios and the great machines. It's the amazing people that you get to meet. Thank you, Allison, for being the best committee chair, never getting impatient with me, always listening, never judging the flailing about that I did, and for asking me that one beautiful question. Would you like a prompt? Oh, yes. My writer's heart said, absolutely. And this is what you told me. What are 5 statements or 5 questions that you want to pose for your thesis? Work with that. Make everything else fit that. Either make those statements with your pieces or answer those questions with your pieces. I could do that. But here we are dealing with family and history and difficulty. So I reached for one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, who talked about story. And this definitely inspired the title for my thesis show. You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and you hustle for worthiness. I decided to step into the story and I kept reading. I believe in the power of research. I know that I don't have it all in my own mind. So these are just a few of the book titles that found their way to my desk. Some of them I already own, some of them from the library. They may have been a little marked up when I returned them. I also believe in a practice of writing to find my way through. I wish I could remember the attribute for the quote on the left, but it grabbed me. It has been said that forgiveness means letting go of all hope of having a better past. I want to practice that kind of forgiveness, but I also want to have a way of shaping the story. The thing is about talking about family means you're opening yourself up. Some people aren't going to be happy about what you're saying. They want it kept quiet. They have ideas and reputations they want to preserve. And yeah, it meant being really vulnerable. I can pose and have my picture taken with very little on, but now I'm talking about my heart. I kept working with my material. I kept listening to my instinct and my intuition. I reached for things, I played with things, I tried them on, I tried them out. I went back to that piece of found wood. Aren't you glad this isn't where it stopped? And I kept reading. Sometimes my inspiration was on Instagram, sometimes from books and articles, and the words of Salman Rushdie really spoke to me. Those who do not have power over the story that dominates their lives, power to retell it, rethink it, deconstruct it, joke about it, and change it as time changes, truly are powerless because they cannot think new thoughts. I definitely wanted to think new thoughts, and I was tired of feeling powerless. So I went back to my friend Tim. I signed up for his class in Photoshop and Illustrator and gathered photographs from childhood that were super painful, worked them into a concept that you now see in the show, bringing all my girls home. I worked on a card. Thank you, Allison, for pushing us, getting that together. Frank, thank you for the beautiful photograph that was on that first invitation. I really felt things were starting to come together for the thesis show. And I was creating the work as I shaped it, as I listened, as I tried things out. Thank you for the questions that you asked, Marley and Jamie, for being present, for holding a space for each person who showed up and paid attention. I kept working with the technology that was available. Oh my gosh, the CNC machine. I'll be back. I'll figure out a way to get to campus. I'll volunteer. I don't know, but wow. Working with these incredible technicians. Nate Dubb is a saint. And watching things come out, wow. Thank you, and Elliot, you're the bomb. I took those pieces, formed them, found the perfect chair, worked on that at home, really felt like I was making progress. Oh, yep, casting in hot wax. Burned myself a little bit there. Thank you, Timmy, for helping me make the silicone mold. And then I lost all my momentum. I'm gonna choke up. I lost all my momentum. Everything closed down. And the thing that had been just within reach slipped out of my grasp. It was dark. Grief is a thing. But then there was movement. I found someone who could cast bronze. I set up a workstation in my garage. Thank you for helping me make that possible. The department was super flexible with how I spent my graduate funds that I had for a completion grant. Then campus made arrangements for me. My work was finished. Thank you, Elliot. It was documented. Thank you, Jaquay. We worked in heat. We worked with our masks on. We worked far apart. Somehow it all still got done. Then this happened. And then this happened. So it's like swimming. All of a sudden, the muddy water started to clear. It was really hard. Felt like I was under for a very long time. I didn't know if I would catch my breath. And I don't know if the video is gonna play, so let's hope it does. It was disorienting. It was invigorating. Sometimes it was elegant, and sometimes I didn't know which way was up. But eventually, after all of that, we are indeed made to rise and find our way to the surface. So I'm here. today with all of you. Thank you. I've come out of the water, and these are the things I'm taking with me. I am always going to be a maker. I will be devoted to story. I will always be seduced by materials. I'm going to find my way by writing, reading, reflecting. I've come up now with a framework for not only conceptual thinking, but for a way to find my focus. I came through this program and found a clear sense of belonging, and I have a direction for the future. Finally, I know I work best in collaboration. Yes, a lot of things happen by myself in my own space, but then it's the people that make it magical, the people who collaborate with me, who tell me their stories, who listen to mine, and I appreciate that so much. So thank you, Allison. You are a badass chair. Thank you, Matthew, for helping me set up shows, for listening to me, for hiring me. Every penny I made on that job went back into the art. Thank you, Kathy, for challenging me when I said one more time how lucky I felt to be here. And you basically said, Rebecca, luck has nothing to do with it. Thanks for that. Timmy, you're my favorite teacher. And Jaquay, thank you for being my pandemic photographer. Cohort, you guys, thank you for sharing 3 years of your lives with me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was really a lot of content in 15 minutes, and I appreciate all your kind words, and it's been wonderful to watch you grow and expand, and I'm excited to see what you'll be doing next. So let's open this up for questions. Who has some questions for Rebecca here? See if I'm, okay. Some nice comments. I see really beautiful comments. Any questions for Rebecca? Okay, thanks. Edgar, we have one. What would be your most favorite piece, Rebecca?
You know, that's tough because they're all kind of like children.
Yeah.
They're, oh gosh. I think the one that I almost gave up on today is my favorite, and that's disorganized attachment. The drawers, they were so hard to attach, to figure out, and yet they speak to me about something that is beyond words. I've written about almost every piece, and I know I wrote about that one, but it's just because I was trying to find words. That today is my favorite one, disorganized attachment.
Right. I sure can relate to that piece very much so. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions for Rebecca? Don't be shy. I'm looking at the Q&A and also the chat now, so either one, I'm watching them pretty closely. Right.
Thank you.
I had one and I've lost it. I have a few, but we'll have to talk again. But
oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Well, we're still working on a few things. So, oh, here's something from Danielle. Thank you, Danny. Rebecca, how did you reorient and find your voice again when you were told you were too easily seduced by materials? I feel the same in my process and often feel lost and overwhelmed.
Oh, okay. Finding a voice. So I was already talking too much, right? I already had. It took all those things I mentioned, just sitting with it, reading, reflecting, reaching out to people, talking with Tim, talking with Allison. But for a week, I just basically lost confidence and asked people to be kind to me. And if they, if people needed a lot, I just said, I have no bandwidth. I'm fragile. So a good week after that, I stayed in that place before I picked myself up and like, okay, I'm in this program, I can do it. But it was tough. And like I say, I'm going to be seduced by material forever, but I'm going to pay attention now to what it is I want to say and the focus for the project, letting the material fit the story. The story now is the medium. All these other things, make the story happen.
And I think ultimately that question pushed you to that kind of vocabulary of materiality, which is really kind of one of the signs of the professional artist.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I do feel like it. Yeah, vocabulary, good word.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, I have something from Owen. What other materials are you looking into?
Ooh. I've been walking, when I have a chance, walking the beach, and I'm picking up, not driftwood per se, but I've been picking up sometimes trash, but like plywood that's been washed around when you talk about material, but as a shift, you know, with stories, my material, I've used my story. My new material is to listen to people's stories. I have a passion for prison abolition, and talking with members of our community who are now inside prison and what their experience is like, taking the material of their story, amplifying that so that they are rehumanized, because the process has been so dehumanizing.
Right. That seems like a natural progression from your intensive self-focus onto some social activism work. And yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we do need to move on, but Rebecca, thank you again, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So our next artist speaking today is Jacob Adami. Jacob, are you ready to take over here?
I am. Hello.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, just 1 second. I'm sorry.
You can ask me.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a full screen. Just a second.
Okay.
Oh, shoot.
I can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm not sure if the video will work because it's asking to change like my preferences. So we'll just start.
Okay.
You can see the screen. It's good. Okay. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Jacob Adame, and I work under the artist name Briar Rosa. I work with a variety of mediums to make paintings, sculptures, drawings, and prints. My work has developed into an exploration of the figure and its historical relationship to symbolism. This relationship is used with a balance of aesthetics, historical juxtapositions, and representational symbolism. These themes are an investigation of my nostalgia and youth, specifically from the context of the 1980s and early 1990s, which were formative years for me. This interpretation of my personal history is both an attempt to show authenticity within the medium and one of personal identity. This particular photo is from my first quarter at Cal State San Bernardino. It's a studio shot that Frank Perez actually took, which was nice. And then from here, we can begin. The work I'm about to show you is in a chronological order. This is my second quarter at Cal State in the grad program. I was invited to be a part of a group show that was going to participate in a gallery in Pomona. This show was called The Anthro-Obscene, and it was about the Anthropocene, which is like the human print of waste material, and it's a the human print footprint on nature. But I decided to make like this installation and recreate kind of like a simulacra or of like a youth culture, and kind of where people are looking at these bright poppy things and participating, and they're kind of persuaded by these aesthetics and don't normally see the work around them, which was the Anthropocene work. In this installation, it became interactive as I handed beer cans out to the viewers, or beer, and people participated by drinking them and creating a pyramid. And these are paintings of trap artists, rap, hip hop artists, Post Malone, Lil Pump on the left, and Lil Xan. And here's another shot of it. And the idea was it became interactive, where people would kind of be interact with the work. And that's the first time I ever made a piece that became interactive, whereas before I only made paintings and sculptures. This is a print I made. I believe that was my second year too. I wanted to learn how to work with the print medium because of its history, and I liked the idea of craft. I like drawing, painting, and print was something I always wanted to learn. This is a dry point etching. It is based off Bonnat's famous etching of Jacob wrestling with an angel, and which is based off the story of Jacob wrestling with God. It's handmade paper that we were able to make in class with a little bit of pink in it. And the name, the title, "Some of Us Hover When We Weep," is based off of lyrics from a Lisa Loeb song, which was a one-hit wonder in the early 90s. And here's a series of drawings I started. I had asked a group of friends from school, which were artists and colleagues, if they would pose for me, and we took lots of shots together. And the point of the project was I was trying to reinterpret these magazines that I learned how to, that I used to draw with from the 90s, which were JCPenney catalogs and Calvin Klein catalogs. And so I kind of posed my friends as these figures, and it created like this kind of black and white look. And we took hundreds of shots each, and I chose like the best poses together. And my idea was that they would eventually be used for paintings, and they will. There's two more. And then this is them together. I submitted them to our second year MFA show, which was in the Dutton Gallery on campus. On the left side, there's Patricia, and there's Daisy, there's Adrian, there's Debbie, and Edgar. And all artists and colleagues from Cal State San Bernardino. And then here's a painting that kind of came from that project. I started thinking about symbolism in paintings, and really a basic idea of using flowers as a symbol. And I studied flowers and their meaning, symbol. You know, roses mean love. The daisy means innocence. And I wanted to kind of subvert that symbolism by putting this like a large dumpster fire, and kind of create this juxtaposition of this beauty kind of and chaos going on within the painting, but also this kind of stillness with the figure. A lot of my work revolves around using the human figure, as I'm a fan of the lineage of creating the figure and portraiture and painting and drawing. Here's some more installation shot from this is from our second year show. And then here's a studio shot of me working on the painting. Next, I decided to do another series of drawings of my friends. I took another group, and I photographed them again, and was trying to replicate again the idea of like these clothing catalogs that I learned how to, draw from when I was younger. And I had asked them to kind of wear like 90s era clothing or like punker clothing. On the left is Nico, and there's Eric and Melanie. And then here's a few more drawings, Debbie and Chris, and then Christian. And then for this particular series, I was experimenting with the paper and Prismacolor and graphite. and it became an investigation of like mark making. And it was important to me at the time because I went to, for my undergrad, I went to UCR, and there we learned a lot about craft. I made a lot of sculpture work there, and I didn't make a lot of figurative work. I used a lot of appropriation, a lot of juxtapositions of material. And so when I came into the grad program, I wanted to kind of go back to the idea of craft and drawing and mark making that I learned in as a teenager in grade school. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of create these kind of reinterpretations of the things I thought about when I learned how to draw. And it's been a very fun experience to go back into. And it, when you draw, you kind of lose your skill a little bit when you don't draw for years. And so I was kind of happy. I still kind of I still kind of had it in me in a way. And I had some rough drafts, and then I created these drawings that look pretty decent. And here's another installation that I did. Again, it was based off a childhood memory. I consider this a interactive installation. It's called I Thought I'd Live Forever, but now I'm not so sure, which is based off a Lisa Loeb song. I was invited to be a part of this group show, which is an interactive group show on campus. And I didn't, as a painter, and as I was painting and drawing, I didn't really know what to make. But then since I was making work based off memories, I decided to recreate like a Saturday morning that I had with family, where my cousins or my next door neighbors would come, and visit, and they'd bring their games, and we'd get together and we'd play games. And for me, this was interesting because as you install this in a contemporary gallery, there's people that have never played a cartridge-based game. Whereas a lot of games now are downloaded on your phone or on your gaming system, and that kind of medium isn't there anymore. But also the fact that it became kind of a communal engagement, where in this show, a lot of people got together that didn't know each other, and they're playing against each other. And I thought that was fascinating because it was, again, reflective of like my childhood memories of playing together with your friend. Here's a video. Let me see if it works. I'm going to play it. And it's just an installation shot. Let me see.
I'll give you these times. I can't picture that. I'll give you more life. And you know what? The next time you need opportunity.
And again, like you may notice these kind of colors that I use. A lot of this is very specific because this is all very influential for me. There's lots of desaturated colors and pastel colors, and if you notice, they're in my previous works that I used, and I tried to kind of replicate and use them in my contemporary pieces. Sorry. And then and here's one of the last pieces I was able to make, which is based off the Tiger Beat magazine, which was like a teeny bopper magazine. There's something about the idealization of the form and the figure, and in these magazines you had like the teen, the pop star, the teen. There was this idealization of the hairstyle and the way the fashion, and everybody wanted to look like them and be them and be with them, and there's just something about the effect that it has on you, I guess you could say, when you're in your youth and you're exposed to it. But I wanted to make another kind of interactive piece where people could kind of be a part of it. And so again, it's different than a painting, but I was still kind of able to utilize my skill with, as far as color, using the same similar colors and similar layout like Tiger Beat had. And I created these kind of subtitles that came from different Tiger Beat magazines. And yeah, that's it. That's the end of my presentation. if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. Congratulations to you. I think there's some questions coming in. Let me just have a look here. Okay, there is a question that I think we heard about the other day on Tuesday during your art opening, from an anonymous attendee asking, can you explain your use of the name Briar Rosa? Will you ever just go by Briar Rosa and not both names?
Yeah, a lot of times it's hard to answer that question because there's like a lot of variables or kind of a lot of thought involved. But I could answer it in two ways. The first way is that I started making, like I said, I went to UCR and I was making sculptures and a lot of appropriation, a lot of Duchampian theory using found objects, and I wanted to use objects that were kind of utilitarian purposes, and I wanted to subvert them. But I was also making drawings. And so the idea was like maybe I could make drawings under my name, and then I created this name, which is based off of Disney Sleeping Beauty, Briar Rose. And I would make sculpture. And so a lot of my idea, as far as using like my nostalgia, I was making these physical sculptures under Briar Rosa, and a lot of my craft ideas were starting to leak into the Briar Rosa. So when I started grad school, I just decided to work under that name. And the Post Malone, that installation was my first time using Briar Rosa, and it was the first time I was able to use it and as an artist, and to see it on the wall, and I continued to use it. So I actually don't use Jacob Adame as an artist. The second part of the second answer to that question is, I think it's fascinating that when you walk into a gallery and you see an artist's work on the wall, and you've never met them, you may not know their sexual orientation, you don't know their religion, their their bio, their nationality, and but you have your experience with the work on the wall. So that, to me, the name became another concept, and that became just another an idea to work with, and so that's why you work with under Briar Rosa.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Another question from Jose Lozano. What was your hardest challenge you faced throughout the program?
I consider myself a figurative artist, and figurative art isn't, there's always going to be like a critique towards figurative art, and what I mean by that is the form, the human figure, the portraiture. And so to me, the challenge was kind of receiving these critiques, and to kind of say like, well, don't use the figure, use these other work in other mediums, or work with other ideas, and I think the critique is mainly like you're telling the viewer what to think. You make a drawing of a person, and you're like, well, this is what you're supposed to think about. Whereas if it's an abstract piece of art, it becomes a subjective experience. So I understand that critique, but again, like I'm a big fan of drawing, painting, and illustration, and I still wanted to continue it as a grad student. And to me, that was the most challenging, was just creating figurative work.
Yeah. And I remember the day you came into our program, you were very clear that you wanted to work with the figure. And, I think that you've really brought it quite far and stuck to that. And I think and you have a clear sense of why you're motivated to depict the figure. So I think you really developed that well.
Yeah, and then also like I kind of also wanted to make work that had a balance of conceptual pieces, but also figure, and that was my challenge.
Right.
Was to just create work using the best medium. That's why I use so many mediums. Whatever concept is best suited to that medium, I'll use it. So.
Right. Yeah. Okay. One final question from the anonymous attendee again. I guess stating that he saw a few paintings before the campus shut down, and I thought he was hoping to see, I guess. What made you divert from your huge scale paintings to focus more on your previously shown work?
Oh, because those large scale well, the pandemic kind of shut down our studio spaces. So a lot of those paintings got kind of locked up during our last quarter.
Yes.
And they were still in progress. So
Right.
they were unfinished at the time. But fortunately, we're going to be recreating, we're going to be installing our shows in the Dutton, you know, and so I'm going to actually be showing those big paintings, and I'm going to be showing new work. And so a lot of this slideshow that I showed was just kind of an overview of my thought process in the program.
Right.
But all these large scale paintings are coming.
Well, they're on their way, and hopefully in a virtual reality exhibition.
Virtual, yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're working on that. Okay, well, thank you, Jacob. Congratulations. We should move right along. Thank you, thank you. Moving on to Haley Roche. Last but not least, will be presenting her work.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I have headphones plugged in. I wasn't sure if they'd work. Okay, so I'm Haley Roche, and I work a lot with found objects. I'm really inspired by my environment and what's available. I've done mainly paintings before I started in the MFA program, and just little alterations to clothings and things like that I just did for fun. One of my first, I guess, like more conceptual pieces was this one in the Pines. It is using this setup, the lighting setup I used as an entertainer, a red robe and a lamp to cast a red lighting into the room. Initially this piece had like the stuff under the rug was showing, but I kind of liked having the mystery of not knowing what's under there. People speculated a body, which I liked. And then I moved more into a really like crazy situation, really unfortunate situation happened to me, and I felt kind of lost creatively, so I started working really intuitively. This was one of the first pieces I did like that. It felt more like a ritual than like I was creating an object, and it helped me process a lot of things. This piece is about 18 inches tall, and it sits on the floor leaned up against the wall, so the white goo drips down onto the floor. It's meant to be kind of humorous and to implicate the viewer as if they're the ones finishing on the piece. Hopefully they feel uncomfortable, hopefully they laugh a little bit. I really enjoyed the process of working intuitively and not having an end goal. Prior to the MFA program, I would have a specific image in mind that I wanted to create or was drawing from, and this was my first time just kind of letting it out. That led to this piece, The Life and Death of Clementine, which I started the same night I started Just Not My Face, but this one didn't feel quite complete, and I wanted it to be something that was really chaotic but like rewarded you for getting up close. So it looks pretty angry and gross from far away. I tried to use colors that are bodily, but only when something's wrong with the body, like pus or bruising or blood. So kind of it's uncomfortable to look at, but once you get pretty close, you'll see that there's like a condom and the wrapper and little bits of trash that you can kind of make out, and it kind of makes it a bit lighthearted. There's glitter and sequins being used, and I feel like it's kind of like life when things are going tough. You know, you can look closely and find something to laugh at in just about any situation, and that's how I try to look at things. And this one felt especially ritualistic because it's the first piece that felt resolved and complete. Once I added that little side piece on and built the frame for it, it felt like its own thing and all together. So that like method of creating really stuck out to me, and I started to think about rituals and how they work, and the symbols that we use and identify meaning with. And so I started to think more about like my own personal rituals, and I created this piece. I was trying to do an abstracted figure at first, but then walking through downtown San Bernardino, I saw this green broken bottle that was covered with cigarette butts, and it was like sparkling so beautifully in the sunlight. And it just kind of made me think about how just there's always going to be coexisting joy and pain, and they're always going to exist at different levels, and it's always fluctuating, and you can never have just one of the same. So I kind of went with the same color scheme of like bruising, but then I also threw in some balloons, sequins, and a googly eye for like lighthearted measure. And this that I saw on the street that was just so beautiful to me in that moment. So with the symbols, I started to realize that cigarette smoking is a bit of a ritual. I've been smoking since I was 12, and it's just, you meet people through smoking, you avoid people through smoking. I think Frank went a little bit in that with his piece as well. And it's just a really weird, interesting, it becomes so important to you subconsciously, and there's a lot of things in the world like that. I became interested in celebrations and how things like balloons, cake, and presents just automatically bring, everyone gets some sort of memory from seeing those things. Maybe good, maybe bad, but it definitely triggers something. And so I kind of wanted to pull back and be a little bit more painterly and figurative. And I made this like small, fun, kind of like simple piece called All the World. And I was thinking a lot about, I don't know if you remember the flying toaster screensaver from the 90s. I remember seeing that growing up on the computer, and I just thought it was so cool. And so I wanted to have cake flying through space. And it was just kind of like a fun pull away from all the abstract stuff. Then I went kind of more personal, and I worked on these sculptures. They're a bit more of an experiment, growing sugar crystals on panties. It's kind of in relation to growing up and how old men will call you sweetie, sweetheart, and how that escalates once you become an entertainer or in the sex work field. They want to know how like you literally taste, and it can be a bit vulgar and violating, especially if it's something you're doing out of obligation to pay bills, but you're still expected to be this sweet and pleasant person, and just kind of having to put on a mask. So it's kind of addressing that a bit. And there's a close-up looking, see like the sugar crystals. And so kind of off on the sex work branch, I was thinking a lot. I did premium Snapchat for a while. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll be quick. I did the premium Snapchat for a while, and this was the wig I used to hide my identity. The peach, I feel it kind of symbolizes consumption and sexuality, both as the actual fruit and both as the emoji. It's used alongside other fruits and paintings. This was What's Your Poison? I was trying to kind of capture like the child, like with people that are like drinkers, there's kind of like a child like, ooh, it's like a treat. And when you go into the bar, it's like you're in a candy store. And so I kind of wanted to capture that feeling. My thesis show was called Honeymoon. I wanted to capture just the average night of debauchery in a hotel, and the crazy fun times people can have in there, just consuming without regard for the next day. And eventually the honeymoon ends and you have to face the consequences of your actions. There's a detail shot. And then this is the last thing I did before the studio shut it down. I had a dream where I made this piece, and everyone said it was horrible, so I decided to make it. And it's called You're Leaving Already? The Party's Just Getting Started. It's an active mousetrap tied to a balloon. I wanted to create the constant tension of when is enough enough? What if you leave and your friends are still partying? That FOMO aspect and that weird social pull versus your internal pull of what you want to do. And yeah, that is my work. Oh, and here's my Instagram and website. It's spelled H-A-Y. I don't know why it's H-Y-A on here. And that is that.
Okay, Haley, thank you so much. Please start posting any questions for Haley. I loved what you said about coexisting joy and pain. We don't really I can't really know what joy feels like without pain, right? The opposite experience. And I think your work really captures that duality. Any questions for Haley? No questions? Yeah.
Everyone's zoomed out.
Well, I hope not. I'm with you. I know we still have 26 participants, so that's pretty awesome. And it's never easy to go at the end. It's been such a pleasure watching you grow and evolve and seeing your work really get quite vulnerable. And the risks really that you've taken in your work have been really phenomenal. So I'm excited for you. Oh, I think I might, let's see, what's this? I have to scroll up. Okay. Okay, Edgar, thank you. Another question is asking, what did you use to grow the crystals in that container, Haley?
Oh, just you boil sugar and water, and you just dip the, in this case, panties in there, and you let it sit for a few days, and it'll just keep growing and growing and growing. It was a pretty fun experiment.
That's sugar, yeah, and the title makes so much sense too, doesn't it? And I love how you know, you really capture something there with that kind of that sweetie, you know. Girls are always supposed to be sweet, and it's a very profound piece, I have to say. You know, very powerful work, as Ken is mentioning, such honest and powerful work.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for Haley? I'm not seeing any other questions. Okay. Oops, there's my alarm going off too. Okay, well, I think we can wrap this up if everybody has any further questions. You know where to find Haley on Instagram and on her website. And I just want to say some final thanks to everybody. And in such a difficult and strenuous moment, all of you are shining bright today. And, you know, pat yourselves on the back. Remember this evening, you know, treat yourselves to something special. You really have attained something really important here. It's a huge accomplishment. And this is also just a really exciting starting point as well of your professional career. And I truly believe all 5 of you are ready. So you've proven it today and many times before. So if there's any other questions or comments, I think we should probably sign off and get away from the computer for a while, take a digital break perhaps, hopefully. And I hope you've all enjoyed this. And don't be strangers, MFA students. We want to keep hearing from you and watching you all you know, thrive out there in the professional world. So keep in touch with us. And you are, by the way, ambassadors for our program. So the work you do, you know, indirectly reflects back on who we are at CSUSB and our MFA program. So we are rooting for you from the sidelines.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Be well, take care, stay safe.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Miss you guys.
Bye,
Miss you
thanks.
guys. Bye-bye.